nerds, and welcome. My name is Ryan. I'm joined by my co hosts, Eric and Jimmy Bones, and we have an extremely exciting episode tonight. We've already spent a considerable amount of time before the show trying to get our facts straight and enjoying some really interesting discussions on some of the details that we're going to be going over with the legends and lore of Armageddon in Warhammer 40K.
It's
I'm
very
stoked about
confusing
this
and complicated.
one. um, So, because of that, gentle listeners, right here at the beginning of the episode, I'm going to give us our famous 40K disclaimer. We're going to be diving into the lore as far as we can tell. When it comes to 40K, there have been a plethora of authors in retcons and changes and timey-wimey shenanigans that lead everything to be canon and nothing to be canon when it comes to 40K. Here at Crossing the Nerdverse, we've done our best to try to parse that information for you, but I would take everything with a grain of salt. Because of that, I encourage you to add your own opinions, thoughts, and findings in the comments down below. And if you are joining us live, feel free to jump in. We'll be checking every comment as they come through. But before we get into the meat of that conversation, now that the disclaimer's out of the way, let's check out some nerdy news that's happened in the last week. Either y'all got anything fancy?
I got a
Uh,
couple things.
All
I
right,
just got
fire
something
it up.
quick then, Bones. My only thing is I checked out the new Fable, like what's out there right now with it. Um, so I'll start with the bad thing first. They haven't shown much in regards to combat. So some people are nervous about how that's going to roll out. Because the focus of the game seems to be more on like the role playing aspect, I guess you would say, and more of the character development. So that's something that I guess is bothering people. I'm not really too concerned about it as long as there's a little bit of variation and stuff like that in the fighting. It's not something I'm going to concern myself too much with. I'm more excited about the role playing elements of the game, which is literally that you can buy everything and make everybody homeless or do whatever you want. Like the game seems like it's going to be very open ended from what everyone talked about and like the demos and stuff like that. So that's rather exciting to me that I mean I'm not going to do that, but like it's rather exciting that you can like purchase different homes or all of them and have a big effect on the economy and storyline in the game. That's kind of cool to me. So it's going to be more in-depth involvement than previous Fables, which is saying a lot because some of them were pretty crazy. But
No, that's
yeah, that's
fact.
the biggest.
Fable's always been famous for having a little bit more to do in the
The whole
setting than most other
good evil
RPGs.
uh, karma system. I
Yeah.
don't know if it was the first game to do that, but it's probably like the first like really good implementation of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to
That's
say
Yeah,
I would
I would say
definitely.
the most famous, yeah.
I definitely think because especially with the first one, like depending on how you went with your characters, what they looked like. That
yeah,
was
Mhm.
another big thing. Is like your
get
character,
all
like
angelic or all demonic.
yeah. So I would definitely say that probably the most famous game to do it first.
Absolutely.
But
And that's impressive to me considering that there have been a plethora of like Star Wars games, for example, where you can see dark side corruption and that kind of stuff develop over your character.
Oh
But
yeah, I mean, I guess Knights of the Old Republic, right? Like that was a
mhm,
pretty good use of it. But
well, Fable's still more famous to me.
yeah, I agree.
Fable was more open ended.
Also, like how it impacts, I think things. I think it was like more impactful in Fable, like being evil or being good.
Yeah, I think I
I've
agree.
al- I've always been curious that no one's ever taken it as far as like Fable originally did. Even Fable pulled back on it a little bit in the second one,
Yeah.
and going forward because they didn't want to have the, I guess the demonic look if you became evil and stuff like that. So, but yeah,
Uh,
exciting time.
yeah. Speaking of games, GTA 6
Uh-huh.
pre-orders open June 25th. Um, I don't know. We'll see. It's
No
supposed to come out
thanks.
November 19th.
We'll see.
We'll see.
I've heard that
uh,
shenanigan before.
I'll probably grab it when it does come out. I'm not much of a big like online person. It's like it's crazy. Like the online community for GTA 5 is still like wild.
Oh, it's wild, thriving for
Yeah.
sure.
But I like the stories of those games. They're pretty fun. Additionally, we got not only did we get a new trailer for Spider-Man, A brand new day, but also tickets went on sale. I got mine.
Oh, lucky.
Yeah,
Nice.
we actually got an early screening. We're going to watch it on Wednesday before. So
Oh, that's fantastic.
yeah,
Release
super
date for
excited.
Spider-Man is what, the 31st? July
Yeah, I think so.
31st?
Ours is we're watching it on the 29th.
That's
pumped.
fantastic, man. Oh, I'm jealous.
Yeah, that's the news that I brought with me today.
All right. Well, I actually have a few just kind of key points, bullet points, as they were. The first one is going to be a big shout out to one of my favorite franchises that has kind of been flying under the radar, I thought, until I saw these numbers, and that's the Amazing Digital Circus. The release of Last Act is reported to be crushing records at the box office, with preview screenings alone pulling in a massive $7.8 million. So shout out to Amazing Digital Circus. Fantastic work. We had several different video game things that I wanted to bring up so that we can kind of cast our nets into the fandoms themselves and see what we got going on. For fans of Gears of War, E-Day stole the spotlight with extended gameplay footage, with confirming an October 6th elusive launch for Xbox. So new Gears, more better for me. I'm very, very excited about that one. We got word that Resident Evil Code Veronica is officially getting a full remake for 2027, which I'm sure the Resident Evil fans are all over. And the one that's got me really kind of excited is Halo Campaign Evolved. Now, 9 times out of 10, I am not a guy that's really big on just kind of remasters or remakes, despite the fact they've been getting better and better in recent years. But a completely remastered Halo, just Combat Evolved, getting released for PC, Xbox, and PS5, is unbelievably exciting for me. So I'm definitely going to be picking that one up. It's going to be releasing on July 28th. And those are kind of my key points for our nerdy news going in there. Got some Amazing Digital Circus stuff, some sweet Halo stuff, and of course, Gears of War getting some additional content. Got everybody nice and excited.
Ooh,
If
what? There's one more that I got to bring up. I think it's called The Death of Robin Hood.
Yeah.
with Hugh Jackman.
Beyond pumped to see that. Something different with Robin Hood, because he is he's always like perceived as just such a bright individual. Like the movies are always so bright and like happy, hopeful, and stuff like that. And like this new trailer with Hugh Jackman, man, it looks so dark and eerie. I think
I'm
it's going to
very
be
excited.
a completely new twist on it, and it's going to be fun to see. I do like the fact that you always kind of see a new Robin Hood, like every, I don't know, decade, give or take. Like the last one was with, I can't think of his name, but the last Robin Hood wasn't too bad. The cast was interesting, but
Was
this
that the
one
one
here
with
with
fucking
Russell Crowe.
Yeah.
We had
I
8
think-
minutes, guys. It wasn't me this time.
but yeah, so that one wasn't too bad. I like the music integrated into the movie more, but this new one, like the way it just looks so dark and just like he's
Plus
given
it's Hugh
up. Like,
Jackman.
yeah,
Yeah, it's Hugh
and
Jackman.
I can't see what the upside is to the movie, like just from the trailer. Like, is he like what he's fighting for, what he's doing, or anything like that? So,
Truth be
Uh,
told, I think I
yeah.
agree. It gives a very Logan vibe to me.
Yeah. That's what
Um,
I like to. As far as movies go too, sorry to yank the reins real quick,
no,
but
yeah.
I wanted to point out, we had Iron Lung
Yes.
do pretty well. Also from YouTubers originally, we have 2 movies recently, Obsession and Backrooms,
Mhm.
which have done also extremely well. Backrooms is like A24's highest grossing like world global release opening weekend at least. So pretty cool to see like I would say like content creators like YouTubers coming into like the mainstream as far as like making movies.
Absolutely.
Also,
And we have
Obsession is super good.
yeah.
haven't seen it.
We also have, for fans of FromSoft, Jacksepticeye revealed that he is producing a Bloodborne animated feature, which I'm very excited about. And just to kind of round us out, a little bit of the last news is for our comic book guys out there. I got remembered about it because of Hugh Jackman. I'm not even gonna lie. There was an announcement of a special collector's edition of Weapon X coming out of Marvel and Dark Horse Comics team up that I'm very, very excited about. It also teased new miniseries for Wolverine and Black Panther and Namor. And so a lot of really interesting stuff coming out of Marvel and Dark Horse in the comic books realm coming very soon. But with that, guys, let's go ahead and spend our remaining 50 minutes here diving into the incredibly complex lore of Armageddon. Now, I started the episode off with our generalized disclaimer, and I'm going to stand by that, guys. But here's something you got to be aware of when it comes to Armageddon. There has been so much conflict on Armageddon, so many books, so many armies, and so many stories told about this particular zone that there is no way we could cover everything in our 1 hour episode. We could do nothing but Armageddon all the way to the end of July, and it wouldn't even be that hard. And so we're going to cover what we can and kind of try to bring you up to speed on what's going on in the Warhammer 40K so that you can dive into 11th edition, kind of knowing what the main story is, what the battlefields are going to look like, because Armageddon will be shaping the entirety of the launch of 11th edition.
Well, I definitely think it was a smart choice for them to go with this for the next edition.
Yeah.
Yeah, just anytime the battles they make sense, like it's a logistics thing and stuff like that. It just makes it more exciting. And there's always big names involved. And you knew they were going to bring back orcs in a big way because they did Tyranids last time, so they had to pick a different one this time. So it's probably, from everything I've read with Warhammer and looked up, this is probably one of the biggest like orc wars that have happened. So it was just a great jumping off point for 11th edition to get people kind of involved with the big green guys.
I absolutely agree. And the fact of the matter is, the previous times they've used Armageddon for launches for box kits or edition releases, I've loved them all. In fact, I still own a large portion of the Hell's Reach box set that came out. And so, no, I'm excited for this one. I love Armageddon. I think it's great. I'm a Cadian man at heart for my guard, but I got mad respect for the Steel Legion, so I'm excited. To bring you guys up to speed, let's go ahead and start with the very, very basics, right? Armageddon, what is it? Why is it important? Why do we care? Now, Armageddon is an Imperial hive world. For those of you that don't know, a hive world is basically Coruscant from Star Wars. The entire planet's been converted into a collection of gigantic cities, to the point of nearly being a metropolis urban sprawl for the entirety of it. Unlike Coruscant, however, Armageddon is notably covered in city of all of its habitable zones. Because the planet itself is basically just a carcass. It's a corpse. But yeah, it's Imperial hive world and an industrial world, and that's what makes it so important. The production capabilities of this particular planet have continued to exceed Imperial quotas since, as far as we know, forever. And it is considered an extraordinarily valuable planet, both for its warp travel and interstellar lanes, as well as its ability to churn out ammunition and war gear for the Imperial effort. That makes it a gold star planet for the Imperial Guard, for the the Adeptus Astartes, the Adeptus Mechanicum. Basically, everybody wants to keep this planet nice and in our control, to the point where we've seen the advent of over a dozen different Space Marine chapters that have showed up to keep this planet ours.
And another thing we got to bring up is the fact that the location of the planet itself along routes is very important, on top of the fact that it's just one of the best producing planets for supplies and things like that. For the war effort, it is its prime location, which is also another reason, like Ryan said, so many people can converge on that planet the way they do for these big epic wars on the planet, because I mean, it'll disrupt so much regarding whoever controls it. So the Imperium will always throw literally heaven and earth at it just to keep it.
That is
There's
weird.
also the implication that it was Olenor
Oh yeah,
previously,
I completely forgot about that.
which is like one of the Emperor's greatest victories during the Great Crusade, and also there's like an orc War of the Beast catastrophe took place there, which is like I think why I think that's like why that matters could be like a reason why the orcs keep getting drawn back there.
Indeed,
'Cause they're
and
fucking weird.
because fucking weird.
Well, Thraka thinks that what is it, Mork and who?
Mork and Gork.
Mork and Gork is directing him in that direction, which is why he keeps going back towards that planet too. So
Yeah, which we'll be covering later, but for those of you interested, Gork and Mork are the two psychic deity figures in Orc society. Yeah, but there's not even really proof they exist, but the orcs think they do, so they do. But yeah, no, we're going to be trying to cover Armageddon, which has over 5 centuries of warfare, and between the battles and the industrialization of the planet, it has left it a barren, polluted wasteland. This entire thing kind of can be summed up as wide expanses of land with polluted toxic sludge oceans separating continents, where there are massive spire hive cities that have been burrowed into the surface, where tens of millions of people live. And everything in between is just, we don't talk about that. We ignore it and we let it be wasteland. There's nothing good about this planet, guys. It turns out great, like war gear and stuff, but as far as the planet goes, the atmosphere's toxic. You can't breathe it. The rain is acid. The oceans are made up of jelly and pollutants from centuries. And there's no plant life anymore, just ash wastes that cover the entire thing.
Yeah, I mean, not even considering just the straight up corruption of the warp.
Yeah. There are a plethora of names that we're going to be going over just to give you kind of a sample. Obviously, we brought up Thraka already, so Gazkul, Mag Uruk Thraka, as well as Commissar Sebastian Yarrick are two of the more well-known names of the conflicts we're going to be talking about, along with General Nikita Kurov, Captain Tycho of the Blood Angels, Princeps Curtis Mannheim, as well as Commander Dante himself. But before we get into any of that, I want to cover the actual bad guy of Armageddon, the actual villain, the real one, not Thraka just doing orc stuff. I want to talk about Overlord Harmon von Straub.
I was wondering, like, are you gonna say Angron? Because I'm not sure that he's the bad guy either.
No, von Straub. Harmon von Straub was the tyrant leader of Armageddon for many years. And is largely responsible not just for the planet's current state, but for the fact that we can't win a flippin' war here to save our lives. This guy was some combination of heretical traitor and absolute fucking idiot that has led even minor unorganized forces get serious victories on the planet of Armageddon. Let's go ahead and start with the one that got everything off with the first war of Armageddon, and what is, in my opinion, one of the most well-known but wants to be forgotten stories in 40K. So this is going to open up with the Demon Prince Angron attacking the planet. And I believe the first war, he didn't bring the World Eaters, right? It was mostly a demon force.
Yeah, I think so.
So bloodletters of Khorne and a host of demons that descended on the planet. Now, the primary reason the planet itself wasn't destroyed in this incursion was because of the intervention of the Grey Knights. And here's where the story gets the most well-known amongst 40K stories. And we're going to cover it very, very briefly. The Grey Knights held their ground against Demon Prince Angron and managed to drive him back, banishing massive amounts of his forces, and saved the lives of millions of people on the planet. They then turned around and didn't want the Empire to learn of the existence of demons and suppressed that knowledge by killing millions of people on that planet.
makes sense.
Yeah. This is one of those stories that everybody in the community knows about the Grey Knights, where the Grey Knights are supposed to have been a secret organization that nobody knew about, and if they ever deployed to a planet and you saw them, they had to kill you afterwards in order to keep their secrecy going. That's the way they worked for many editions. They've been trying to get away from that image since the release of 8th, trying to bring the Grey Knights into more of a mainstream observation in the Imperium, to the point they're actually bringing out a lot of interesting theories regarding their gene seed. But not during that first War of Armageddon. they cleaned up their mess. And that ultimately kind of sums it up. Angron came, the Grey Knights came. Armageddon was stuck in the middle between two massive psychic powers, and anybody that's in 40k knows that anytime you bring too much psychic power to bear or demons touchdown, you don't really recover from that. It's a kind of screwed corruption, screwed up your planet forever kind of thing.
This is also the first and only war that is won on Armageddon, considering none of the other ones are ever complete.
Yeah, none of them ever actually stop. That's where. So before the episode, we were actually discussing the flagship of the release of 11th edition is talking about the Fourth War of Armageddon. Really, there's only been 2. And then another skirmish with Angron, kind of stuck in the middle. It is officially the Fourth War of Armageddon, but here's where we actually get into the meat and potatoes of what we're going to be dealing with Ghazghkull Mag Uruk Thraka and his Wa that attacked a little forgotten planet on the, northeastern section of the Segmentum Solar, and where he encountered the greatest fight of his life with a little cybernetically augmented commissar named Sebastian Yarrick. Now,
yeah, they really hate each other.
Yeah, they do, man. To be fair, actually, Ghazghkull loves Yarrick. He thinks he's the best thing ever. To the point where a rumor that he was still alive brought him back from the dead, as far as we can tell. So have either of y'all ever dived into any of the novels or anything from Armageddon? I know, Bones, you said at the beginning of the episode, not really your jam. And Eric, you're fairly new to the community, right?
Yeah, no, all I did was read just some research that I could pull up on Google and stuff like that. So it was just kind of, that's why I think when I did it, I didn't notice the Fourth War. I just saw that it was broken into 3 because I didn't get like as much information as I possibly could have. So
I think that's actually fair. There's a lot of argument to be made that the Fourth War is just the Third War still going. So
yeah.
Well,
But
let's
no,
go ahead and talk
I never
about
did too much.
let's go ahead and talk about that second war here as we get into the real meat of it. Now, guys, this is where I get to talk about why I hate von Straub so fucking much. I hate this bastard so much. So von Straub was the overlord and the tyrant in control of the planet, and he knew that Thraka was coming. He knew for months that Thraka was coming, and he refused to go to battle stations. He refused to call for aid. He refused to do anything. Basically took a very don't look up mindset and ignored the problem.
Yep.
This is where we actually get introduced to Yarrick, because Yarrick, who was still just a commissar at this point and had no real history whatsoever, protested adamantly against Van Straub's negligence in this particular regard. And what that got him was banished to a different hive city called High Hades. Which ended up being
these places all have such inspiring names.
Oh yeah, on Armageddon, all their hives. Oh man. But yeah, High Hades. That was fun. Now, this actually proved to be the only good move that von Straub ever made, and the only one that was beneficial to Armageddon, because once he banished Yarrick, Yarrick got pissed off and decided to send out an astropathic call for aid anyway. Now, the orcs hit Armageddon Prime within, I think, about 2 months. And when they hit Armageddon Prime, within a week, they had conquered it and moved on to Armageddon Secondus. and they just could not be stopped. Orcs were flying in like cancer, and their invasion method was very, very orc. I think this is actually the template for orc invasions that we see, because ultimately Ghazghkull Thraka had a Space Hulk, which for anybody that doesn't know is it's a space junkyard of a bunch of ships that got smooshed together ultimately. And they're notoriously homes for one of two things, either orcs or gene stealers. And so he had the Space Hulk. He had about a dozen vessels with him that survived on the approach and conquered Armageddon Prime onto Armageddon Secondus within about a week. Now the tide starts turning at Hive Hades, unsurprisingly. This is where Yarrick kind of became one of my favorite characters. And that's saying a lot, considering I cannot flippin' stand commissars 9 times out of 10. But Yarrick did good work. So Yarrick was in Hive Hades, where he had been banished. And not only did he manage to start to reconstitute the Imperial Guard units that were in the area in order to form some kind of defense, dude didn't hold back on anything. He formed militias out of the workforce and the labor slaves of the Hive. He put a gun in anybody's hand that could shoot vaguely straight. He even made alliances and deals with the Hive Gangers of Hive Hades in order to bring as many defenders to bear as he possibly could. And this is where the stories really start turning from a one-sided massacre into more of a conflict, because he managed to hold Hive Hades against the oncoming orc tide. It was one of only 3 real sections on the planet that held well and didn't have any serious breach, with Hive Hades and then Hell's Reach and Acheron each forming bastions of defense on the planet. During this conflict, they finally got reinforcements from that aspect, the call we mentioned a minute ago, with the arrival of Blood Angels, led by Dante, Marnius Calgar of the Ultramarines, and Tushan, I don't know how to say his name, of the Salamanders. And this is, I think, really the first mainstream conflict of Armageddon that everybody got aware of, because this was a box release, very similar to what we're seeing with 11th edition. And this is where you got a lot of the stories. Most of these are pretty much what you would expect, I think. Y'all said you hadn't read many of these, right?
No, I didn't get into any.
I read some of the first stuff because, like I said, Chaos.
Yeah.
I also love the Grey Knights as well. So
I actually think Grey Knights are pretty cool. I'm not a big fan of some of their newer units, but they're fine.
Cool. I mean, lore-wise, I mean, yeah. As far as units go, I don't know. It's fine, I guess, but
it's fine.
But I like the lore-wise stories that they're in.
So yeah, ultimately, this is where it transforms from massacre into an actual conflict, and we start getting a lot of the more militaristic stories, desperate holdouts and heroes kind of rising up. Amongst these heroes, I want to bring up, really, Princeps Curtis Mannheim. Now, Mannheim was kind of a noble to begin with. If I remember correctly, and anybody in the comments, feel free to correct me here, he was a Titan pilot, which I'm not perfectly sure that's a life I'd want in 40K, but okay. Titan pilot, guys, is somebody that gets strapped into a gigantic war mech, I think Pacific Rim, but bigger scale. And in order to pilot it, they just plug everything into your brain. And that's what you do. So he managed, against the orders of von Straub, just like everybody else that actually did anything decent during the Second War, to hold out the orcs up to and including his valiant sacrifice. And this is the first kind of heroic death that we see in the Second War, as Mannheim realized his position was being overrun. I believe he was holding at Acheron, and decided in that moment to overload and destroy his own Titan, which in and of itself is heresy for anybody that knows the Imperium. You don't kill a god machine. But he overloaded it and detonated his Titan. It destroyed a dozen Mecha Gargants, which are effectively the orc equivalent of a Titan, and I think incinerated just hundreds of infantry and war machines for miles around its detonation, leaving a massive crater behind and ensuring the safety of Hive Acheron. During this time, Ghazghkull was getting frustrated at. Sorry, go ahead.
I gotta say one thing. This is one of the few times I've ever actually this is the only time I've ever seen a truly heroic human moment in Warhammer 40k. Generally, there's not a whole lot of self-sacrifice in that to save a city. So that's pretty impressive.
I think so too. And here's the thing: as far as the Empire is concerned in 40k, that was an act of traitorous heresy.
Right, that's what I mean.
Like, you do not blow up a Titan. He was condemned to hell and moved on. But I think, yeah, you don't see a lot of heroic self-sacrifice in the narrative in 40k at all. You do in the Guard, but it's much smaller scale. You know, think very like Saving Private Ryan.
There's probably like 3 people in heaven in that universe, and that guy's one of them.
Right, Mannheim was the shit. I loved Mannheim. He was great. He was actually kind of a dick, to be fair, because he was still a Titan pilot and therefore kind of aristocracy. But I think he was a good dude, and he proved right at the very end that that he cared about his planet, he cared about his cities. Let's get back to Ghazghkull Thraka and High Hades and Hive Hades. At this point, Yarrick has proven himself to be an extraordinarily canny and wily, squirrely commander in regards to his defense of Hive Hades. And it's pissing Ghazghkull off a lot. He does everything in his power to try to breach into the city, to get going. And ultimately, Ghazghkull succeeds. But not before Yarrick was able to evacuate nearly the entirety of Hive Hades in front of a massive counterattack by Ghazghkull Thraka and get them out of harm's way. And just to put it into contrast, Ghazghkull Thraka attacked Hades with so much force and so much frustration at Commissar Yarrick that his steamroll didn't stop. He obliterated Hive Hades, more or less. He didn't actually raise it to the ground or anything, but obliterated it, and ended up continuing that momentum in order to attack Tartarus. Now, Tartarus was, again, all these wonderful names, just makes you want to live there. Tartarus was one of the larger hives on the planet. This is also where, if I remember correctly, von Straub was hiding because his glorious defense plan of do nothing failed. And the only thing that stopped Tartarus from being completely obliterated was the advent of the Blood Angels, led by Commander Dante, that halted the advance at the edges of Hive Tartarus. It's during this conflict that Ghazghkull ends up retreating, moves on to put his attentions to the Golgotha sector, and von Straub fucking survives and retakes leadership of the planet. Yarrick was a little pissed off about all of this and fucks off to go hunt Ghazghkull Thraka, engage him and harry him through the warp and into the Golgotha system. And Yarrick, who again has been a canny hero up to this point, fails miserably. He gets all of his men killed, and he gets captured by the orcs. While he was captured, he was awaiting execution. The orcs brought him to Ghazghkull Thraka, and this is where we find out that Ghazghkull Thraka thinks Yarrick is just his best friend. He thinks he's the dopest dude ever. He's the best scrap he ever had, and cuts him loose. Says, "Go out. We'll fight again in the future."
But he retires after that, though, so he kind of got what he wanted.
Sort of. The reason he retired was massive surgery due to the injuries he received during that conflict. One of which was the loss of his eye, which actually I think the eye happened on Armageddon. And the other one was the loss of his right arm, which he actually replaced with a mechanical claw that he cut off of Ghazghkull Thraka.
Yeah.
Again, heresy, technically, in regards to the Imperium, you can't use Xenos technology if you can call orc shit technology. But yeah. And so
it's a war trophy.
Yeah, it's a war trophy.
Makes it okay.
After this, we can kind of see a massive uprising in what Ghazghkull is attempting to do. Now, this officially ends the Second War of Armageddon, just so you're aware. Basically, what happened at this point was that Armageddon was saved, heavy air quotes, and has to spend the next 57 years trying to get all the orcs off of the planet. they ended up forming entire regiments, not just of the Steel Legion, which are the well-known and well-disciplined forces of the Astra Militarum that come from Armageddon, but they also developed the Armageddon Orc Hunters, which are entire regiments of guard that just go out and try to kill orcs on Armageddon. It's their only job. And yeah, they do that for decades.
And we know this because the orcs come from spores and they never go away.
They never go away. Every time you kill one, spores get somewhere. There have been very, very few successful attempts to excise orcs from a planet, and if you ask my opinion, they weren't successful. They're just slowed it down a whole bunch. But yeah, it's kind of like trying to get rid of Tyranids. Like you really, I don't know, you got to destroy the planet, right?
That's why the wars never end.
So during this time, we see Ghazghkull Thraka starting to rebuild his horde. He destroys an Imperial base on Buka 3 with asteroids, not by throwing the asteroids at it, but putting a whole bunch of missile launchers on asteroids and kind of pointing them in the right direction because orcs. His horde overruns Trigon 17 as well as a host of Agra worlds in the section, and they end up actually destroying an Imperial heavy cruiser called the Radiant Way. These are the key features that kind of set him up to get back at Armageddon for another grueling fight, but the key feature is an ally that he made, a Bad Moon war boss by the name of Nazdrog Oog Erdgrab, who, yeah, that's a mouthful, right?
I don't
who
think I could say
introduced
it.
him to teleporter technology, which is something he had not had before. This is where we see kind of the cunning aspects of Ghazghkull Thraka take a front, because we see a man who has mastered a lot of conventional types of warfare and enjoys a brute scrap just as much as an actual strategic invasion, start adapting and mastering a plethora of war styles, from guerrilla tactics to organized fleet maneuvers. Really, this all culminates in an attack on Piscina 4, where he got to test his teleporta technology. So he invades Piscina 4 by basically teleporting an entire orc horde onto the planet's surface, wreaking havoc, destroying most of it. The Dark Angels ended up intervening and pushing his horde back off the planet, but ultimately that was part of his plan. He wanted to test the teleporter, and the Dark Angels getting to enjoy their victory was cool and all, I guess. And this is where we get into what is officially the Third War of Armageddon. Now, this separates into a couple of different sections, I guess, between the Season of Blood and yet another invasion by Angron. So here I think are the main things you need to know going into the Third War. After the Second War, Armageddon had spent an incredible amount of resources in order to update their defensive technologies, including their augury and listening stations and early warning systems that they set up around the Armageddon sector. They named these after the heroes of the war, including Dante, Yarick, and Mannheim. They moved the headquarters to St. Jawin's Dock and formed a new council of leadership. Now, this was a good move. This is where we actually see von Straub just kind of disappears mysteriously, and everybody else kind of scrambles to shore up his great failings. On the council, General Kurov, which is the most senior military officer at this time, and a guy that I think really knows his shit. He doesn't take a whole lot of nonsense from the noble classes and is really focused on the defense of Armageddon. We see a rise of dozens of new regiments of soldiers, including the ones I mentioned earlier with the Orc Hunters, and the start of the Season of Blood.
So, I would like to start with this next war here, just because I got a bit of a breakdown I wrote up. So the way the next one starts is it happens out in space. And as Ryan mentioned, Thraka is invading with the literal largest warg in history. There's never been a bigger one. He's literally going in with all his chips, trying to kind of just finish what he started last time.
Let me jump in real quick. Bones kind of mentioned it earlier a little bit, but this is spearheaded by just minor little detail. This inconvenience really called the Great Rift that ripped the galaxy in half. And on the tail end of the Great Rift was a second invasion by Angron and the World Eaters that kind of loosened the pickle jar, so to speak, for Thraka. Continue, Eric.
But yeah, so it starts out in space. Let me see here. I just want to make sure I get it all right. So the Imperial fleet tried to stop them in space prior to landing, because obviously, who wants to deal with them on the planet? And some of the chapters that were out there: Black Templars, Space Wolf, White Scars, and Steel Legions. So they all tried to put some sort of defense together and stop them before they landed on the planet. The battle lasted, they say, somewhere around 2 weeks, give or take. So it was a rather long time in space, but the orcs did do the job and wiped out quite a bit of them before reaching the planet. And Bones might be able to tell us a little bit about the thing I'm curious about is the rocks, the giant rocks that slam into the planet. Is that their ships?
Bones, you want to take this one?
No, you got it, man. You seem excited. You seem excited about it.
The rocks are what originally brought me into orc lore to begin with. I think they're brilliant. Yeah, a rock is a heavily mined out asteroid that they strapped a gun and an engine onto and called it a spaceship. And they land by crashing into a planet. And if you are an orc on that asteroid, that's your landing craft and how you invade. And if you die in that crash, you weren't a real orc to begin with.
And your spores will just bring out more. So once they land, the first place they attack ends up being Hell's Reach.
Well, actually, an interesting detail on that section. The precursor to the attack was the fact that Thraka ended up sending a wide net in order to draw as many people in as possible. He ended up originally sending his orc pirate fleets to attack Minerva, over a dozen Agra worlds, and shut down supply routes leading into Armageddon.
Oh wow, that's
yeah.
Like I said, I didn't get a whole overview of everything. It mainly stuck with Armageddon, so that's rather good to know, and it does show how smart. Everyone's got this bad perception of orcs. At
most
least
of them
40...
are. Yeah, most of them are as dumb as a box of rocks. Not all of them, no.
But see, that's it, right? So this isn't your D&D orcs. Just
the ones that the rest of them think are smart become very smart.
Absolutely true. For anybody who doesn't know the joke, the orcs canonically, as far as I can tell, again, canon, have what's called a Gestalt overmind. And basically, if enough orcs believe something is true, reality warps to make it so. Which is why the color red makes them go faster, even though it doesn't for us. Which is why the checker pattern, black and white checker pattern that they saw on Horus's armor means things are super tough, and it works that way now. And why purple is the sneakiest color ever, because one of the orcs originally asked somebody else, "Have you ever seen a purple orc?" And everybody's mind was blown. So yeah, the ones that they think are very smart are very smart.
But yeah, so Hell's Reach was the first big battle on the planet this time. That's like a massive fuel refinery. And it's a port city, stuff like that. So it's Thraka learned from the first time. Obviously, you got to hit certain places. So that's where he hits first. They don't completely destroy it, but they do enough damage where it was pretty devastated afterwards. The only people that were there were Black Templars, Steel Legion, the Titan Legions, and they had a rather large contingent of, I don't want to call them civilians, but more of the like militia style.
Militia, yeah.
Yeah.
There was one big name amongst the Black Templar that we'll circle back around to, and that's Chaplain Grimaldus, who was in charge of the Black Templars situated at Hell's Reach.
The biggest people that passed away there that died was the Steel Legion. Lost the most at that particular battle, from everything I read. And this proceeds to the best battle, in my opinion, because I'm a Salamander fan. So it's the Hades Hive campaign. That seems to be where the literal biggest fight of this entire war happens. Um, this is where there's literally salamanders, blood angels. Let me see. I think they're steel legions, but there's just a large number of especially the salamanders. And the person that's in charge of the whole thing is actually their chapter. Um, what is it? Chapter commander,
Chapter master.
chapter master, and I can't say his name right. Tushan. Is that
Yeah,
right?
I think it's Tushan. That's what I've been saying.
Yeah.
Um,
And they actually focused a lot in this particular fight on actually saving people, not just the complete destruction of the orcs.
yeah, it's actually by the time we get into the Third War, the Hive Hades conflict I think is very, very interesting. Now, obviously, you talked about the Void battle to begin with, right? That we have Admiral Peril got a massive flotilla together to try to defend the planet before they ever reach them, and that's where we actually see what Ghazghkull's been able to pull off for the Third War. As compared to his original invasion force, his new one had over 2,000 ships, 10,000 rocks, and at least 12 space hulks under his command. He didn't so much invade Armageddon with his force as he just kind of avalanched into it and could not be stopped. The Hive Hades, I think, is a fantastic story because, I guess, spoiler alert for the end of it, Hive Hades is destroyed. He ends up dropping thousands of tons of asteroids from orbit onto the city, but not before the the survivors, the defenders, had withdrawn and evacuated back to what's called, I believe, the Morphean Line. Oh no, I'm getting ahead of myself. He destroyed Hive Hades with the assistance of everyone's favorite traitor, Von Straub's back, working with the orcs and his own little green cult. God, I hate this guy so much. So yeah, Von Straub shows back up, basically pulls the whole like I'll open the doors from the inside vibe. And him and his little cult of people assist with the destruction and invasion of Hive Hades. After that, the orcs continued to kind of roll in. And Eric, correct me if I'm wrong, but next up was the Besiege of Vulcanus and the Siege of Hive Tempestora.
The next one I had was the Acheron.
Acheron.
Yes, but the big thing to mention from the battle, other than just the fact that it was salamander led with best chapter, is the first big death for this war happens at this point. Aramis Taicho from the Blood Angels.
Yep.
He gets taken out in this particular battle, and he was one of the big names that was on this planet, and probably also one of the reasons that Blood Angels was picked to be on the box. Gonna throw that out there.
Yep, I think I agree with that assessment in its entirety. Yeah, the loss of Tycho was a wild event for me. I didn't expect that, to be honest.
I think it's because doesn't he succumb to like the whatever I can never remember what the Blood Angels call it, like when they kind of go crazy.
The Black
someone
Rage.
died. Yeah, so that's what happens is he succumbs to that, if I'm not mistaken, and he kind of holds people off, holds back the orcs while people are sort of retreating and stuff like that. Because again, the salamanders are the only somewhat humane chapter, and put people
Debatable.
first.
Yeah, more frequently than the rest. Relatively speaking, one of the more humane chapters. We're just going to gloss over some of their lesser known interactions. But yeah, no, the death of Tycho at Acheron was a major deal. I actually have to correct myself because it was Von Straub's betrayal at Acheron that was a big deal. He was not in Hades. He was at Acheron.
Yeah, because they do the tunnel fighting in Acheron, right?
That is correct. Yeah.
Yeah, but we're running short on time here. We haven't got to the fourth war yet. So
Oh yeah. Okay. Let's do some bullet
Fourth war
points.
time.
I can do
So-
some bullet points for the fourth war. I'm actually prepared for that one.
Go
All right.
Bones.
Well, hold on. Let me round out Third War. So we got Vulcanus and Hive Tempestus were both besieged by the orcs. Hive Deathmire holds. The Hive Tempestora besiegement was most notable for its use of submersible vehicles that attacked the city's coastline that were designed by what is quickly becoming one of my favorite orc names, Orcomedes.
Yes.
The Steel Legion organized fighting retreats, withdraw to the Orphean line, and they were reinforced by, for those of you that are Space Marine players, the Storm Giants, the White Scars, the Marines Malevolent, and of course, our Salamanders. Acheron counterattacked. Chaplain Grimaldus survived the destruction of Hell's Reach and becomes a figurehead of resistance. High Vulcanus is nearly destroyed in an artillery barrage by the orcs, which is stopped by the advent of Tempestus Aquilons and the Elysian drop troopers that rescue them and then move on to attack the Mannheim Gap. After that, we have the end of the Third War, moving into what we're going to call the Fourth War, guys, which is basically because Thraka got bored and went crazy. Bones, take us away.
All right. So first, I'm just going to go through how it's not necessarily in chronological order, but we have Angron coming back. Come back for revenge, I guess. I don't know. But along with Angron, we also have the Grey Knights coming back. So a little bit of mirroring of the First War. Now we have Wazdaka, the vanguard of
Wazdaka Gutsmech.
Yeah, of Gazkul's forces. So he's there with his Speedwa, just harassing things because that's what they do. They're very fast and harassing, breaking up supply lines.
Interestingly enough, just because Gazgul said he could use the Teleshaka in order to race across the galaxy.
And then we have the return of Yorick. His ability again to unite Armageddon. He's very good at that. Then following that, we also have what is his name? Marneus Calgar?
Marneus Calgar of the Ultramarines.
Yep. And the Operation Imperator, which is basically just a big coalition of Space Marine chapters doing their Space Marine things, trying to basically stabilize Armageddon before Gazgul arrives, which dealing with Wazdaka basically at this point. I think the only bad guys, I say bad guys, that we're really missing are the Tyranids. We get some Tyranids in here, and it's like,
yeah, you're not wrong. There's even stories of the orcs because they kind of followed the same template as last time, right? They attacked the whole area around it and brought everything in. Again, this is more of a continuation of the Third War, but it is separated by Thraka getting bored and fucking off, which is where High Marshal Helbrecht of the Black Templars led or allied with Yarick in order to hunt him down. But even the Eldari had planets that were attacked and destroyed during all of this. The Tau had planets that were attacked and destroyed during this war. I think the only thing we're missing is Tyranids.
So that's kind of where we're at. We're just kind of patiently awaiting the arrival of Gazgul.
Which this is where I got to jump in for Travis because I know he's going to be listening and just chomping at the bit for me to tell this particular story. Whenever High Marshal Helbrecht and Yarick were hunting Gazgul Thraka, Gazgul had this whole thing go on. He ended up getting psychic visions from Gork and Mork, and it was so powerful that it imbued him with crazy powers. It blew up a whole bunch of orc psychers called Weird Boys, and he got his vision of how he was going to do this section of the war. And effectively what it was he was going to go and attack orcs. He was going to go attack all his orc buddies and take their armies to make the largest war of all time. And it's during this that we see the advent of Ragnar Blackmane and the Space Wolves that tried to stop him with a literal decapitation strike where they attacked Gazgul Thraka's ship, the Kill something, and cut his head off. However, because his friends thought he was tough enough to deal with that, he just did, and put his head back on and continued heading for Armageddon.
So
Yes.
now that we're there, now that we're kind of caught up in this current spot, I think there's some questions that we should talk about.
Yeah.
And one is Yarick even going to live long enough to face Gaskul?
So
Because
there
he's
was
already old. He's already he's decrepit more or less, or getting there at least. Uh, and so is he even going to live long enough to face his arch nemesis?
well, and I think he's got two things really going for him. I think old Bale Eye has a decent amount of cybernetic enhancement, and that'll help. But most importantly is the orcs want him to be there. So, yeah, I think he'll be there.
I think he will too. I think that he'll probably die.
Yeah.
Probably to Gaskell, I would imagine, but maybe not. But so another question then: Are chaos? What happens now that we have chaos and orcs? You know, we're essentially going to end up at a three-way war here because they're not friends.
Yeah. Well, and so for those of you that know the memes, right? There was a Angron book. I've not personally read it, but I know the story, where there was an art piece of Angron, and he had a skull as a trophy that had Yarick's cybernetic enhancements and a commissar cap on it, and it kind of became this ongoing joke that developed into canon, where Angron killed Yarick, and it pissed off Gazgul Thraka enough where Gazgul one-on-one'd him, and from what I can tell, won. This is where we get the joke about Yarick died and then the orcs brought him back. We don't have any actual evidence that's what happened, but that's I think so. I think that's exactly what happened. Oh, Baelai's still alive.
I definitely think. I was gonna say, I definitely think Yarick dies this go round. I think he has to.
I mean, he's an old man at this point. He's flipping ancient.
But I do think Yarick will work with Chaos to deal with the orcs.
I doubt it. I mean, he hates orcs more than he hates anybody, so you got a point there.
I do think they will.
Now, the problem with it is that it's Angron and the World Eaters. They don't work with people. They don't work with each other. I think to give your idea some credit, he might organize it where he kind of points the Hulk, so to speak, at the problem. But I don't think it'll get much further than that. I don't think he's going to make any deals or anything.
Oh, I don't think he's going to sit down at a table with them or anything. But I think he's smart enough to use them to his advantage. And I think Angron, not that he's smart, but in a sense, but like he's also competent enough to realize the orcs are the bigger problem. So I definitely think that'll be something that gets dealt with. And then once that's dealt with, they'll deal with each other. But I do think Yarick will die by the end of this.
So do we think that... Okay, first of all, do you think that the Armageddon's potential identity as Olenor, whatever, however you say that, is going to matter? It's been heavily implied in some of the earlier novelizations, and so is it going to actually mean anything now?
I think it's gonna. I really do. And here's why, and that's because Cadia was destroyed. Cadia, I mean, not including Earth, Cadia was one of the most famous planets in the Imperium, right? With its destruction by the 13th Black Crusade, they need a new figurehead to launch from, especially in the war on the Maledictum. And I think that Armageddon fits that really, really well. If they add religious and holy significance to the Empire for that, even better. So I think it will absolutely.
Well, if that's what you...
Hold on. I got to throw one thing in with that question. So I do think it's going to play a big part. And I'm going to say this every single time and always attach this to everything that happens in 40K. With it being Armageddon and it actually being this Ulnar, whatever planet, I think it's a great way to introduce Vulcan because salamanders have played such an important role in the defense of Armageddon. It's a great way to bring Vulcan back.
That way, if you say it often enough, eventually you'll be right.
Okay,
right. So I
actually kind of agree with our friend here, Eric. because I think that. Okay, so do you think the Imperium is going to win on their own with this, without
Oh,
some kind
hell
of
no.
major intervention? It's going to be either the Emperor or
A Primarch.
or Primarch. So it very well could be our Salamander Primarch.
I mean, realistically, who else is left that could come back real easy? Because when you
So
look at it, Gilliman is nowhere near there, if I'm correct.
I think there are two options that have the same likelihood as Vulcan. One of them actually more so than Vulcan. And the first one I'm going to bring up is the Grey Knight Grandmaster. I believe his name was Castellan Crow.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Valdis, maybe? Aldrich Valdis? The one that got lost in the warp and is out there just hunting demons for shits and giggles now. I'll look up the name as once I get done here. I think him tearing back out of the warp to go head to head with the world leaders and Angron once again and getting caught in a fight against the orcs would be a fantastic story and probably the most likely advent of a name of legend coming out. On the subject of Primarchs, though, he's not a Primarch. He's cool. He's psychically powerful, but he's not a Primarch.
Right.
I think Vulcan's likely. I could see it. I could see the narrative going that direction. However, if they come back with Vulcan's been at the core of Armageddon for the last 10,000 years, I'm be a little pissy about that. The other one I think is Jakati Khan.
Oh yeah, the White Scars.
Yeah, I think Jakati Khan could come ripping out of the warp on the back of a bike with a spear in hand to kill a whole bunch of orcs, and I think it would be very much his style to just show up with a flash and flare.
I'm gonna cross my fingers and hope we get two Primarchs, and one of them is Corvus.
Corvus Corax, hell yeah.
Coming to high on Angron.
To be fair, I don't think that Vulcan is like just in that planet. I just think he'll come back. I just think they're gonna make a cool way for him to come back. Just because it's an easy way to do it. They have to bring another Primarch back because there's so many chaos back. They got to start going one for one. So to me, just with the particular planet they picked, the war and everything like that, the most sense makes. It's just Vulcan.
I could see
unless somehow they bring back what's his name, Sanguinius or whatever, because they picked. No. I don't think so either, but they picked a Blood Angel, so I'm like, maybe they're trying to throw us off of the fact that they're bringing Vulcan back. Or
Sanguinius is one of the handful of deaths that if they undo it, they kind of undo their entire storyline, right? Like you can't bring Horus back, you can't bring Sanguinius back. And I know they're gearing up, and we saw. Let's go ahead and just address it right here at the end of the episode. There's a large portion of people that saw the Emperor move in our trailer.
Oh, yeah, we talked about it last time.
We talked about it last week. I've reviewed it extensively, and I have not changed my mind. It's Imperial propaganda. Believe it at your peril. Yeah, no, I could see Vulcan coming back. I do want to take a couple seconds. I know we are officially out of time, but I want to take it anyway. For those of you that are looking to create armies, get into the game, or join the community with the advent of 11th edition, and you have more of a Vorthos mindset for Magic the Gathering and want to be lore accurate, we have talked about nearly a dozen chapters of Space Marines that were all present and have investments in Armageddon. Obviously, Salamanders, Ultramarines, and Blood Angels were some of the biggest, but you have the Storm Giants, the White Scars, the Marines Malevolent, the Salamanders, the Steel Legion?
Steel Legion. Yeah, Steel Legion.
Obviously, there are two different types of Imperial Guard units that you could go and have a lot of fun with. The Armageddon Steel Legion is a fantastic army with some very bespoke models that I think are cool. Good trench coats, gas masks, all the good things. The Armageddon Orc Hunter regiments that are vaguely Catachans that aren't from Catachan, I think would be a lot of fun. Big knives, lots of Rambo symbolism. On the orc side of things, guys, I want to bring up Ghazghkull Thraka's Waaagh. Now, this is the Great Waaagh. Eric put it earlier. This is the largest Waaagh that's ever been brought together. It's so big that Thraka doesn't actually have control of it. He can vaguely guide it and then just let shit happen. He has 5.5 bosses that make up his like inner circle, any of which you could base your orc units off of. And that is going to be Boss Snickrot, who is the Red Skull Commando that has been living on Armageddon, performing guerrilla tactics and insurgencies against the humans for the last 60 years. Obviously, we talked about Orcomedes, which is an orc mech, or potentially several orc mechs that design some of the most outlandish and powerful orc machinery available. Nozdreg Ug Urdgrub, which is the Bad Moon's war boss, and effectively he's a thunk. Him big, him strong, him bunk. But he did have access to teleporter technology, which made the whole thing possible. That he gave to Gazgul Thraka. So the Bad Moons have a lot of say in this. Next is going to be Ugrok Glitztooth. This is his 4th commander, another one from the Bad Moons, and he's a mech. But unlike Orcomedes, he doesn't do vehicles. He does like augmentations in war suits and walkers and stuff. And then Jimmy Bones brought up what is my personal favorite, I think, since we don't know a lot about Orcomedes, in Wazdaka Gutsmech, who is the bad orc bike boss. He's Lobo, guys. He's Orc Lobo.
Yeah.
And he's awesome. And I said 5.5 because Wazdaka Gutsmech does not go anywhere alone. He has Fix-It de Grot, his little Gretchen companion that is the only one that can fix his bike on the fly and knows how to rig the fuel right, which is his Gretchen assistant. Is considered the fastest and luckiest Gretchen of all time. But yeah, guys, that's been our thought on the lore of Armageddon, covering all 4 wars very, very quickly, even though it's really kind of just 3.5. We covered the big names of the fights, the good guys, the bad guys, the pieces of shit, looking at you, Von Straub. Guys, do you have any closeouts?
No, I think we covered it. I just think that one possibility is the Emperor intervening. So maybe he did move.
So my prevailing theory is not that he moved, but I do think the Emperor is going to make himself very well known. I'm actually going to lean heavily on the reinvention of the Legion of the Damned. I think the Legion of the Damned are going to show up on Armageddon and do some crazy cool shit. And so if anybody's with me, paint up your Space Marines as Legion of the Damned, find a whole bunch of skulls instead of heads, and make your Ghost Rider Space Marine Legion, and send me pics because I think they're awesome.
It's a great time. They're going to make Space Marines 3.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
but with that, guys,
cool.
We're going to go ahead and bring this episode to a close. You've listened to the opinions of 3 dudes on the 40K lore. If you liked what you heard, guys, obviously you're enjoying the show. And so the best way to support us is to buy some merch. I say it every week. Our summer line is out, and it's awesome. Second best way, of course, if you're feeling particularly generous, is to give us a like, give us some comments down below telling us what you think, and most importantly, give us a follow because we know the way.
Oh, one thing. So next week, I'm thinking we're gonna do something different. We're gonna go in a route that is more towards TCGs. I want to do some talking with some of the stuff going on with Magic the Gathering, and kind of just the updates with that, because they're talking about doing a lot of different things in regards to adding a lot of big names to it now and getting away from their own universe. So I think that'd be an interesting topic to kind of go over. So,
yep. And if you have any opinions on that, guys, give us a comment down below. We review every single comment, and if it's particularly good, you'll even get a shout out in the show. But with that, guys, we're going to bring this episode to a close. We have been Crossing the Nerdverse, talking about Warhammer 40K. We will see you next week for Magic the Gathering. See you later, guys.
Goodbyes.
I'm not singing. I'm not going to do it.